Shalom, everybody. Hi, it's me, Vanessa Malave, and you're watching Moving on Faith Ministries. So it is Torah Tuesdays, so let's get into it. Now, the scripture I want to talk about today is in the book of Exodus, chapter 21. And before I start, I just want to say that we have to always remember when reading the scripture that there is a literal aspect to it, but there's also a spiritual aspect. So we can read something and we could think to ourselves, well, this doesn't happen anymore nowadays. This is not what we're experiencing in this century and decade. But when you say those things, what you're not doing is realizing that there is always a spiritual aspect to every scripture, and the spirit is eternal. Thus, the word is eternal. Okay, so let's get right into it. The book of Exodus, chapter 21, and I'm going to start at verse 2. For those of you who are joining us for the first time, I'm reading from the ESV. When you buy a Hebrew slave, he shall serve 6 years, and in the 7th he shall go out free, for nothing. If he comes in single, he shall go out single. If he comes in married, then his wife shall go out with him. If his master gives him a wife, she bears him sons or daughters, the wife and her children shall be her master's, and he shall go out alone. But if the slave plainly says, I love my master, my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then his master shall bring him to God, and he shall bring him to the door or the doorpost, and his master shall bore his ear through with an awl, and he shall be his slave forever. So this is really interesting because we can read that and say, well, nobody owns me. Like, I'm not a slave. I'm not a servant, right? So nobody owns me. I can kind of go and come and go whenever I want, and my family's coming with me. Well, let's look at this spiritually, okay? Now, let's paint the picture. We know that Satan is the God and the master of the world. So when you are someone who is living in the world and you are of the world, then you are a servant or a slave to Satan, okay? Now, if you're in the world and you are Satan's slave, okay, whether or not you acknowledge it or realize it or know it, this is a fact. And Satan gives you a wife and gives you children, because at this point, if you're not serving Yah, then you're serving Satan, you're serving wickedness. So thus your wife and your children are given to you in that servitude, okay? Now, if you decide to now come into Torah and leave your slave master, your master, Satan, right? At the 7th year, like it says, a seventh year will mark freedom. That's what the scripture says. If you leave, but your wife still belongs to the master, she's not coming with you, and neither are your children. So we see this a lot where men, I'm going to say men because I've heard it from several men that this has happened, but I'm sure it has happened to women as well. But there were men who in the world, they had, they were in the world and of the world, and they had wife and children. Upon learning the truth and upon submitting themselves to Torah and to the will of Yah and living by his instructions, upon that happening, hence they went free from Satan, they broke free, and they now have began serving Yah. Once that happened, their wife left them and she took the children with them. Some of these men have not seen their children for years at this point. So this is a real life thing that happens, folks. This is not a make-believe story or a make-believe situation. This is 110% real. It is happening to people all the time, every single day. People are leaving the world. They're leaving Hasatan and they are entering into Torah, and they are being left without a spouse and without their children. Okay? Now, we can also say that on the flip side, if you are a servant of Yah, you're living in Torah, you're walking in Torah, and Yah has now given you a spouse and has blessed you with children, that spouse and those children belong to him. Should you choose to leave, you go out without them. They're his. Okay, so we can look at that on both sides. All right. One last thing I want to bring up is the fact that it says, if the slave says, I love my master, I love my wife, and my children, I will not go out free, then the master is to bring them to the door post and put an awl through their ear, put a nail through their ear. What does this symbolize? Okay, here's the thing. The breaking or the spilling of blood at the time of a covenant, in which a covenant is being made, that seals the covenant. That marks the sealing and the implementation of that covenant being made. I'll give you 2 examples. When a male child or male adult is circumcised, right? We know that the circumcision, the physical circumcision, is symbolic of entering into the covenant. We know that. And so when they are circumcised, the spilling of the blood during that procedure marks the beginning of that covenant. It seals that covenant. Second example, if a man should so marry a woman who is a virgin, back in the day, you got married as a virgin, right? So the spilling of that blood, right, marked the beginning of that marriage covenant. So the spilling of blood during the time of a covenant marked the sealing of that covenant. So when he puts the awl through the ear of the servant into the doorpost, the spilling of the blood from that ear now marks the beginning of that covenant. It seals it. Okay, so this is why that is even thrown in there. Again, with everything in the word, you're going to see a physical aspect, but there's also going to be a spiritual aspect. So what I want to do is encourage you to take the opportunity to reread these verses, meditate on it, pray on it, ask the Most High to reveal to you what the truth is. I don't have all the knowledge, definitely don't have all the wisdom or the understanding. However, I'm sharing with you what he has revealed to me. Now, he may have revealed something else to you. And if he has, please drop it in the comments below, because I would love to hear it. I would love to learn too. I love to be edified, and I love to be shown revelation. If he has revealed something to you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it with the rest of us. So again, please pray on it, meditate on this, and really think about it. And then ask yourself a question. Whose servant are you? And if your spouse is having a hard time coming into Torah, you need to think about this. Whose servant are they? This is a tough question to ask ourselves. We don't want to ask ourselves this question, but it's so vital and it's so necessary, because we need to remember that our walk with Yah and serving him is our primary purpose. Our primary purpose. It is what we were created to do. Everything else comes after that. So it's definitely something to think about. With that being said, thank you all for tuning in. Please like the video, please share it, please subscribe to the channel, and if you have any precepts, please drop it in the comments below. I appreciate any type of edification or thoughts or opinions that you want to add. Thank you so much for watching. Shalom.